Alright, before we begin everybody, just so you know, this is an optional lesson. If you're ever interested in making any sort of games in JavaScript, I would recommend learning about 2D arrays. But there are a few other uses too. A 2D array, also known as a multi-dimensional array, stores a matrix of data in rows and columns. It's useful for games such as tic-tac-toe, chess, Sudoku, or any game where you need a matrix or grid of data to keep track of spaces mostly. It can also be used in spreadsheets. Think of Excel. Excel has rows and columns. Or, representing images, an image is a matrix of pixels. Our 2D array is going to look something like this. Each row is an individual array. We're going to end up storing all of these rows within an array. Let's create one. Let's name our grid. This will be a constant, but it doesn't need to be. Matrix. We'll create a matrix of data. Our 2D array is going to store individual arrays in each element. Our first array, let's say we have the numbers 1 through 3. Each row should be comma separated. The next row will be 4, 5, and 6, then 7, 8, 9. So what we got to do is store all of these rows within an array. And there's our 2D array. To give you a better visualization, I'm going to place each of these rows on a new line. There. Hopefully that makes sense. Our matrix is a 2D array. Each inner array represents a row. Each element within the inner arrays represents a column. 1, 4, 7 would be the first. 2, 5, 8 would be the second. 3, 6, 9 would be the third. If we need to print the elements of this array, here's one way in which we can do that. Let's use a for loop. This will be an enhanced for loop. We need some sort of counter. Our counter is going to be row. For every row of our matrix, let's begin by console.log each row to see what we're working with. Each element in the 2D array is an array itself. However, I would like to print the individual values. We're going to create a rowString. Let's use const rowString. We will join all of the elements together in each row. Row.join. Join each element, but separate them with a space character. Then console.log each rowString. There's our grid. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all arranged in rows and columns. If you need to access an individual element within this matrix, you have to use two indices. For example, let's take our 2D array of matrix. The first index is for the row. The second index is for the column. You would think that row 1, column 1 would be 1. But arrays, they start with 0. The element at the first row, at the first column, would have indices of 0, 0. Let's change that to be an x, like we're playing tic-tac-toe. Now we have x, 2, 3, so on and so forth. For the element at row 1, column 2, that would be again our matrix with two indices. Row 0, column 1. Let's set that to be an O. There we are. Again, our arrays start with 0. Row 1, column 2 would translate to 0, 1. Let's do this with the others. I think we see a pattern now. 0, 2, matrix at row 0, column 2. Let's set that to be an x. That would be 3. Now to move on to a different row, we have to increment our first index. Matrix. Matrix at row 2 would be 1. Column 1 would be 0. Let's set that to be an O. That did change. We're now within the second row. 1, 1 would be row 2, column 2. Row 2, column 3 would be 1, 2. Okay, last row. Again, to move down to the next row, you've got to increment the first index. Column 1 would be 0. We'll set 7 to be an x. Row 3, column 2 would be 2, 1. That will be an O. Row 3, column 3 would be dot. We'll set that to be x. There we are. With the length of your rows, they don't necessarily need to be all uniform. For example, with my first row, I'll add 0 to the beginning. So now we have dot. Maybe I'll remove the last element in the last row, where we just have dot. You can also mix and match data types. Let's add a new row. Our matrix will represent a telephone number pad. We need a new row. I'll add an asterisk, 0, and a pound sign. There. Our matrix represents a telephone number pad. Alright everybody, so that's a 2D array. It's a multi-dimensional array that stores a matrix of data in rows and columns. It's useful for games, spreadsheets, or representing images. We won't be using these again until we start making some games later on in this series. And well, everybody, that is an introduction to 2D arrays in JavaScript.